What's going on, guys? Nathan Barna here. Today, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite topics ever, and that is spirituality, of course. But before I get into what I want to talk about as it relates to spirituality, I think it's important to define what I actually mean, because a lot of people get turned off by that word. Especially people that are very oriented and indoctrinated into the paradigm of scientific materialism. So what I mean by spirituality is really at the most fundamental level is the science, or not, well, you could call it a science, but it's really the science of causes. Looking at what causes what. And that's, really, when you look at science, that's exactly what we're trying to do with science. But I feel like the main difference between science and spirituality is that spirituality allows you to move further into the experiences that you're having and the causes of the experiences that you're having, whereas science is usually only lets you go as far as, what a study says or what an experiment says, and how that experiment is run is a completely different story. And we're not going to get into that aspect of it today, although that is an important thing to consider. But like I said, really at a fundamental level, whether it's science or spirituality, we're really referring to the same idea. And the other thing with science is usually it has to operate within a certain paradigm, which goes against the fundamental nature of science. But again, another topic for another time. Spirituality, as I said, the science of causes. So what I wanted to really discuss today was that when you start asking yourself that fundamental question, what causes that? What causes that? I'm alive right now. What caused me to be alive? Okay, so if you start taking this further and further, which we can do this all day, because it's pretty infinite, because there's always something that causes something else. But when you start digging deeper and deeper, you realize that what caused me to be here is the same thing that causes everything to be here, because it all comes from the same place. And it all relates back to the universe. But then you ask, what created the universe? And most people would say that it was a Big Bang, but then you have to ask, okay, what created the Big Bang? And was there anything before the Big Bang? So really, that's all I'm referring to when I'm talking about spirituality. Just continually digging deeper and deeper, not only into yourself, but also into the world and the universe around you. And when you dig deep enough, you realize that there is no separation between the two. The digger you go into you, the more you realize that you are the same as what's around you, because there can be no other thing, because you all stemmed from the same place. And so with this kind of prelude in mind, what I wanted to get into was that, when you start looking at the different problems that we're facing in the world, especially now with the whole, pandemic and racial injustice and kind of economic turmoil and agricultural issues and environmental issues, and really it's all across the board. And when I sit down and when I meditate on these things and when I discuss these things with people, I really go through the same process. I ask myself, okay, well, why is that way? What created this problem? You can look at, we can talk about coronavirus because that's pretty relevant during this time. And it's something that is on a lot of people's minds. But, you can look back on what created the virus, and obviously there's a lot of different theories about that. And then you could keep digging down that hole, and you could ask yourself, well, what causes people to get sick in the first place? What causes people to contract a virus? There's a lot of times we get stuck on this very superficial level of thinking where, we want to just attack the problem at the same level that it was created. Whether it's a virus or bacteria, we have this idea of war, and we got to kill everything. We got to get rid of everything, not realizing that the more we kill outside of us, the more we're killing inside of us, because again, we are in fact the same thing if you dig deep enough. And so when it comes to issues like these, a lot of it, if you really start to ask yourself those fundamental questions and you start to question your own beliefs, which is something that I like to do on my free time, you see that so many of our problems come down to a problem of consciousness and a problem of awareness and a problem of spirituality. Is really, when you get deep enough into these things, everything is a spiritual problem, because so much of what we create in our outer reality is a manifestation of our level of consciousness as individuals and as a collective, as a whole. So, if you take each individual and you assess their level of consciousness, you will see that based on where they're at, whether, and there's a lot of, we can go on a whole tangent about what consciousness is, but again, that's not the space for this video. We'll talk about that later. But again, when you look at what the different levels of consciousness people have, obviously the higher up that you go, the more and more you realize that you are one with everything else. And that's where a lot of this stems from, specifically with the coronavirus, is when you look out and you see all of these things taking place and all of these things happening and all of the fear that we are being riddled with through the news and through social media and through other people, and it's all around us. But what I try to explain to people is that the best thing that you can do to not only help yourself but to also help other people get through this time is take care and control the things that you can control. And by that, I mean taking your health into your own hands and doing the things that you can do that you have direct control over, which are, again, which are the choices that you make on a daily basis, optimizing those decisions so that you can be the healthiest and most vital and most able to provide for others. Because the healthier you get, when you, even simple things like eating higher quality food, moving away from, genetically modified food and conventionally grown food that's sprayed with toxic pesticides, even something as simple as that, as simple as drinking more clean water, these little actions can start to increase your health. And as below, so above, as above, so below. When you increase your health, you're able to start to think better, and you move your body away from this fear-based and left brain dominant, which is the seat of your rational, logical, doing what you've always done way of thinking, when you're able to start to move away from this and move into your right brain hemisphere and become more balanced in your nervous system, having more of that parasympathetic activation that allows you to relax and to have better thinking and to think more holistically as you tune into your right brain hemisphere. When you move towards that, you start to become more aware of what's actually going on, and you're not stuck at the level of fear that is causing you to do what you've always done and to listen to the first thing that you hear on the news and believing everybody's out to get you and playing the role of the victim, and the list goes on. And all of this can stem from the simple act of doing things that are better for your body. And once you start to grow into this, that's when you start to raise your level of awareness, and ultimately you raise your level of consciousness. So again, as you raise your level of consciousness, then you become more aware of your potential as a human being and as a fundamental piece that's not separate from, but is part of the whole of everyone and everything. And you realize that the better that you become and the more that you actualize yourself and the more awareness you bring for yourself and the more that you can open up your heart to the world and approach people and approach the world and approach the universe from a place of love and connection instead of fear and separation, the more you realize that the things that we really need to be concerned about aren't just, getting rid of a virus, or aren't just global warming, and aren't just, political policy and things at the top level, at the surface level, things that we spend so much time worrying about. But you realize that the better you get and the clearer you're able to think and the more holistically you're able to think, the more you're able to then reach out and help others. Because remember, you can only provide to somebody else that which you authentically have within yourself. If you're scared, if you're unhealthy, if you're sick, if you're sad, if you're depressed, if you're tired, because you're not taking care of your body and you're believing everything that you hear, and you don't start to ask deeper questions and question your own beliefs about the nature of the reality that you're living, then you're not coming from a place in which you're able to give to other people. If you don't have that love and that sense of connection within yourself, then you don't have that to authentically give to other people. Because during times like these, during a time of crisis, that's ultimately what we need. We can sit around and wait for, and pray and hope for policy to change, or for laws to change, or for mandates to change, or for our culture to change. But if you're not doing your part in that, which starts with the decisions that you make on a daily basis and how you carry yourself and how you live your life, if you're not being an example of what you want to see in the world, then you can't expect other people to make those changes. And so, coming full circle here, this is why I say that everything is a spiritual problem. Because when you start to ask those questions and you start to figure out what the root causes of these issues are, you realize that if everyone did more to raise their level of awareness and, question their thoughts, question their beliefs, and start to ultimately take better care of themselves and ultimately grow their resilience to anything, whether it's, a virus or bacteria or whatever is thrown at them. If we can do that on an individual level and we make those choices for ourselves, then that's, we can help spread that to other people. And that's what we need. We don't need a top-down approach. We need to start from the ground level with what we have direct control over and help spread it at a ground level, which can alter what happens at the top. Because the base, the foundation is what determines how tall and how structurally sound the top is going to be in the first place. And we are the foundations. The choices we make on a daily basis are the foundation for not only the future of our lives, but the future of humanity as a whole, and our children's lives and our children's children's, and from generations to come. So if we don't have that awakening within ourselves and help other people have that awakening, we're going to continue down this path of doing what we've always done, which, if you look around, isn't working very well for, in our favor, as we're destroying ourselves and destroying the environment that we live in. So I hope you can see how much power you have when it comes to these situations and these challenges that we face. And that's why I think it's a beautiful time, because we're forced to look at ourselves in the mirror as individuals and as a collective, and we're forced to see how our actions are contributing to these challenges that we're having. So take a minute, take 5 minutes if you have the time, and if you choose to make the time, sit with yourself and start to move into that concept of spirituality as the science of causes. Start asking yourself, what causes you to be the way you are? What causes you to make the decisions that you make? And through this process, that's when you'll be able to grow your awareness and ultimately grow your level of consciousness, which is what we need at this time. That's it.